Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're ready to ask of the state, is there further evidence for the state?
Yes, Your Honor. The state would call Debbie Tant.
Ma'am, if you would please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right.
It's a Bible. There.
Ma'am, do you solemnly swear the testimony you give before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
Thank you.
Mr. Latour?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am. Will you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Debbie Tant.
And how are you employed, Ms. Tant?
I'm a salary administration specialist in the Human Resources Division of the Administrative Office of the Courts.
That's a mouthful. Can you tell us what that means?
That means that in Human Resources, I and my team make sure that all employees get on the payroll, get off the payroll, handle anything that happens with employees while they're on the payroll, including their time and leave.
Okay. And how is time and leave collected, that information, how is it collected by the state of North Carolina?
Since 2008, we have used a system called Beacon.
Can you tell us what Beacon means, what it does?
Beacon is a time and leave system that is internet-based, that employees enter their time, their hours worked each day, and then they release that time to their supervisor. Their supervisor approves it, and upon approval, then their leave accrues once half the month has happened.
When we say their leave accrues, what are you talking about?
For leave-earning employees, state leave-earning employees, they earn a certain amount of vacation and sick leave each month.
All right. When you say that they enter in their hours, is this all just a computer-based program?
Yes.
You go on and it's a series of clicks and data entry?
It looks very much like an Excel spreadsheet.
All right. And when they do that, are there certain ways that an employee can enter in their time worked, like categorize it in the system?
They can only categorize it as time worked for their time that they actually worked.
Okay, what about time that is not worked?
They would categorize that as leave, either vacation, sick, holiday, jury duty, other management approved leave even.
Okay. And are those abilities to enter in time not worked limited by the system?
The only limits are for leave. If your schedule does not schedule you, say on a Saturday, because most of our state employees don't work on a Saturday, then you couldn't enter leave on a Saturday, because why would you be there in the first place?
Okay. What about hours worked? If you're working outside of the standard normal hours of, let's say, 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, how do you enter those in?
Well, the system doesn't look at you as working from 8 to 5. The system says how many hours did you work. So it will put, you can put 8 hours in, 5 hours in, you can put up to 23 hours in per day. The system will allow you always to enter time worked. It will give the employer a warning and say, hey, are you sure you worked these hours? Because it was over the standard that we expect you to work for that job. However, it will let you go through that, review it, and save it, and release it to your supervisor.
When you say release it to your supervisor, what's the process of doing that, and why is that required?
Well, the first step is the employee enters their time. They review it, save it. Then they go to release their time. This is the opportunity for the employee to check one more time to make sure that what they've entered in is correct before they release it up to their supervisor so that their supervisor can approve it.
Okay. And why is there a requirement that it's released to a supervisor? Why does a supervisor have to be involved at all?
Because we're all state employees and we are accounting for our state time and state taxpayer dollars.
Okay. So it's a kind of a check and balance to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing?
And it's a supervisor's job to keep a check on that the employees are actually entering their time.
Okay. And when you testified earlier about leave accruing state employees, are there different types of state employees?
There are different types of state employees, especially with the judicial branch.
Okay. What types of employees are there within the judicial branch?
Within the judicial branch, specifically the district attorney's office.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, that would be okay. The support staff in the district attorney's office, such as the victim witness legal assistants, the victim service coordinators, the administrative assistant, all earn leave. The assistant district attorneys and the elected DA do not earn leave in the Beacon system. The assistant district attorneys are afforded by their elected district attorney a certain amount of leave. It's at their discretion. So there is no accounting for time and leave in the Beacon system for an assistant district attorney. But for all support staff, they have to report their time worked and their leave taken.
Whether that's a victim witness legal assistant or an investigator?
Yes, sir.
And so those two job titles specifically fall under those rules that you were talking about,
Sir.
where you have to enter the time, release the time, have it approved, and if you don't release the time, you don't accrue the leave. Is that correct?
That is correct.
When you get into the Beacon system, how does Beacon keep track of the employees within Beacon?
In what way are you speaking?
Can I log in and put in your time, or do I have to log into the system? Can anybody just go on and say, I'm Patrick Latour, I'm Debbie Tant, and these are my hours worked? How does that happen?
Each employee, when they are brought on board, they are given a Beacon personnel number, and that number follows them throughout their lifetime career with the state government. They are also given a password, which they change every 90 days. This allows them to get into the system. So each employee keys into Beacon their user ID and their password, just like you'd key into Gmail or anything else to get in. And only there they know their password.
Okay. If you don't release your time, let's say I log in and I put in 8 hours of time worked, but I don't release it to my supervisor, what happens to that time and what happens to me?
Nothing. It sits there.
Okay. So if it's not approved by the supervisor, the time just sits there.
The time just sits there.
Will I receive my paycheck?
Yes, sir.
Why is that?
Because the judicial branch made a decision in 2007 to allow that to happen. Because otherwise, we have so many elected officials who could be so far across the state, we would hate for a judge not to approve someone's time and their employee not get paid because they're halfway across the state. So, and that was the way it was all the way back to 1980. Employees received their paycheck regardless of whether they had entered their time worked or their leave taken.
Okay. And so I'll get paid. Will anything happen that I don't gain anything by not putting or having my time approved?
You won't earn your vacation or sick leave.
Does that have any effect on other benefits that you may have, that an employee may have through the state?
No.
Like dental or health insurance or retirement or something like that?
No, sir.
So the only negative effect for the employee would, their time not being approved or released, would be that you're not accruing your leave time.
Correct.
For these, and I know you testified a moment ago that these employees who, let's say in the district attorney's type office, a victim witness legal assistant or an investigator, are there certain requirements through AOC or the state as to what those hours worked and paid should look like?
No, we have a multitude of schedules that they can put in, that they could pick what schedule. We have people who work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. We have employees who work 4 days a week, 9 hours, and 1 day a week, 4 hours. So there's a multitude of schedules to match the number of hours they're paid for each week.
Okay. But the number of hours that you put in is supposed to reflect what?
The number of hours that an administrative assistant or investigator are supposed to reflect what they actually worked.
Okay, and why is that?
Because those particular positions are subject to the overtime provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act, and is against federal law not to accurately record your time.
Okay. And so I guess the question then becomes, if I input hours that I'm not working and I'm paid for that, is that okay under the AOC system?
No.
Thank you. Now, other duties that you have through your course of employment would, I think you may have said this already, do they include processing new hires and the paperwork that's included in all of that?
Yes, sir.
And are there certain forms and things that are required to be filled out for different employment, whether you're being hired, terminated, etc.?
Yes, sir.
And those are standardized forms?
Yes, they are.
And those are forms that you, during the regular course of your employment, interact with?
Oh, yes.
From that answer, I take it a lot.
A lot.
Okay. And through your course of employment, do you have regular access to employment personnel files?
Yes, sir.
And through employment personnel files, can you tell us what those are?
Personnel file is the record of everything that happens with an employee as far as their new hiring, transferring, promotion, a leave of absence, a separation, and all the paperwork that goes along with it, along with I-9s, resignation letters. I-9s.
Sorry.
Excuse me. Resignation letter, things that go along with that.
Okay. And the state compiles all of these things for every state employee?
The judicial branch compiles it for all the judicial branch employees. I have no clue what the rest of the state does.
All right, but so judicial branch will limit that, and I guess usually when I'm saying the state, we'll talk, let's assume I'm discussing the judicial branch. The judicial branch compiles the personnel files and all of those documents for all their employees,
Yes, sir.
and those are packets that are kept during the regular course of business. Is that correct?
Yes.
And those are packets that you use.
Yes, sir.
And may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to approach you, Ms. Kent, with what I've marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 5, and also what I believe are your glasses that you requested.
Thank you.
If you will take a moment, and I guess put on your glasses first, and after you've done that, review State's Exhibit number 5. And once you've done that, if you recognize it, tell us what, if anything, you recognize it to be.
It's a personnel record.
And is that a personnel record like we were just talking about, one that's kept during the regular course of business and that you would have access to?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, is that a personnel record that you provided upon request?
Yes, sir.
And whose personnel record is that, if you know?
Cindy Blitzer's.
All right. At this time, Your Honor, the state will move to introduce State's Exhibit number 5.
Any objection?
No, sir.
It's allowed.
Now, Ms. Tant, in looking at this document, it includes a lot of state forms, correct? Like we've talked about.
Yes, sir.
Specifically, I've kind of tabbed a few sections, and looking at this page, can you kind of just tell us what that page is generally?
That page is the notes page that would have been in Beacon for an employee's action.
Okay. And when you say a notes page for their action, what does that mean?
It means that for every action in Beacon, Human Resources types notes into the system so that there are notes in the personnel file so that we know what goes with everything instead of just using the computer file.
Okay, when you say an action, are you talking about maybe a change or something like that?
Any type of change, such as new hire, leave of absence, etc.
Okay, and that's what that page is?
Yes.
Correct? And that's a page for Cindy Blitzer?
Yes, sir.
All right. And the next page is that something similar?
Yes, sir.
And the next page?
Yes, sir.
And the next page?
Yes, sir.
Now, Your Honor, if I may, published to the jury? I think it's already turned on.
Yes, sir.
Lock it here.
Yeah, I think you'll be fine. All right, so now, can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Now, looking at this, this would be the first page that you talked about as being an action page, correct?
Yes.
As is this next page that we talked about as an action page. The next page is again an action page. And the next page is an action page.
Yes, sir.
So, in looking at this, you said this was for Cindy Blitzer, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we know that how?
Because her name's the very first thing on the notes page.
Okay, and what else can you tell and from that form, and tell me how you're able to tell that?
Mr. Latour, are there some lights that illuminate the page on the Elmo projector?
I believe.
I think you're just getting overhead lighting, which is, yeah, that's better. And then
Okay. Hope that helps. Now, looking at that, if you can, tell me what you recognize and how you recognize and what we can learn from this piece of paper.
Okay. On that piece of paper, Cindy Blitzer, with that social security number, was hired as a DA victim witness legal assistant in DA 17A with a certain position number and the salary, which I think is $46,900. At that time, it also told what type of action it was. It was a non-beacon to beacon return to state after 5 years, effective January 1st of 15. And there's also a note where she worked before that, which was revenue. That's a standard note below it that says has no prior service in the DA's office as of 1/1, and how many total months of aggregate state service she has as of 1/1.
Okay, and then there's some stuff down here at the bottom.
That tells who did the action, which was Shannon Mears, the date it was done, and the PCR number, that's the actual transaction number where she entered it into the beacon system.
Okay, so basically, is what this paper note depicts her being hired by the Rockingham County District Attorney's
Yes,
Office,
sir.
which is DA 17A.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it says that when she was hired, she was going to be paid a salary of $46,900. Correct?
Sir.
Okay. And all this other stuff about non-beacon return says that she worked for the state at some point for the revenue department and had never worked for a DA's office, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now the next page then, which I will show you, is a similar style page. What can we gain or glean from this piece of information?
From this notes page, Cindy Blitzer is now listed as a district attorney investigator in DA 9A with a position number and a salary of $48,000. It was a promotion because that was the type of action that was done, and the effective date of January 13th. And it states that she went from a DA victim witness legal assistant in 17A to a DA investigator position in DA 9A. She has no prior service because prior service is a month of service, and so she would not have had a whole month of service as of yet, and then the total aggregate service.
Okay, so basically, she's hired on January 1st, which was the last page that we looked at, and 12 days later, this transfer occurs to District 9A, which is the Caswell-Person County DA's office, correct?
Yes, sir.
And she receives more income as a result of that, and that's the basis for the change.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now I'll show you the next page. And looking at this, what information can we learn?
She's still in 9A. And then on 2/2 of 2015, there was a organization and position transfer. That's what OMPA means.
What does that mean?
It means that a position and the employee are moved from one org unit to another, which is what the very next paragraph talks about.
Okay.
That they're transferred from a DA support staff, which is one org unit, to a different org unit with both under 9A.
All right, is there anything else in
The
that note?
supervisor is John Stoltz.
All right, and again, that's done by Shannon Mears.
Mhm.
And you know Shannon Mears.
Yes.
How do you know her? Who is she?
She's a salary administration specialist within Human Resources.
Okay. So what we've gained from, or the information we've gained from that is that she's hired, 12 days later, there's this transfer to another office, and then several days later, after that, there's this position change and she's got a new supervisor.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the new supervisor's
John
John Stoltz. Okay. The next piece of information, what do we gain from that?
Cindy Blitzer, with an annual salary now of $50,160, has been separated effective 10/24/16, which was her last work day.
All right. And again, Shannon Mears.
Yes.
So when you say separated, what are we talking about?
No longer a state employee.
Okay. So her employment has either been voluntarily or involuntarily terminated.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm going to, if I may, well, this is in here, so I'll show you up here if you can. Do you recognize what this is?
That's a benefits confirmation statement to show that someone has been enrolled in the Teachers and State Employees Retirement System.
And can you tell when she was enrolled, if she was, off of this document?
As of date 1/1/15?
Okay. So January 1st, 2015?
Yes, sir.
Which would have been that initial hire date as we learned off of the other.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I'll show you the next page, if you will. What is this?
When an employee is separated, they receive a benefits termination notice, which lists all their benefits and when the coverage will end.
Okay. And is this here, I believe that's October 26, 2016?
That's just the print date.
Okay. This piece of paper, again, is for Cindy Blitzer. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is the termination notice, so this would have been after that last note page that we learned about
The
in October.
separation action generates the benefits termination
Okay.
notice.
And so are all of these things listed below the benefits that she was receiving throughout the course of her employment?
Those are the benefits she would have had at the time of her separation.
Okay. And so looking at this, can you tell us what type of benefits she had?
She had flex dental, flex vision, flex cancer. Core AD&D, flex life insurance, and the retirement system.
And it appears that there are several different termination dates on there, or coverage end dates. Is there a reason for that?
Depending on when you leave within a month, the date could be different. For example, I don't see health insurance listed here, but health insurance would be the end of the next month if they left, say, the 20th of the month.
Okay.
So it looks like most of them are October 31st.
The one that appears to be the different number is the retirement
In
plan.
retirement, you would stop contributions on the day you stop working.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I guess here's another page that we didn't look at. What is this? Is that
That's the health
ins-
plan.
Okay, I apologize. That's the health plan that you
That's
were
the
talking
health
about.
plan.
And there's a different date listed there,
Correct.
and that's November the 30th of 2016.
Because her separation date was after the 15th of the previous month. Therefore, she could go to the end of the next month.
All right. Thank you. Now, those are not the only forms that are that you use, correct?
No.
Okay, there's a lot of other ones that you have as a condition of your employment, correct?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what I'm marking, if I may approach, Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
as State's Exhibit number 6.
Okay.
For identification purposes, this is State 6. If you will take a moment and review that.
Okay.
Having reviewed that, do you recognize it?
Yes, sir.
What do you recognize that to be?
This is a record of someone's time and leave.
Okay. And when you say a record of their time and leave, is that their beacon time?
This is their beacon time, their official record, yes.
And whose official record would that be?
Cindy Blitzer's.
And is that a record that you would have access to that is kept during the regular course of your business and employment?
Yes, sir.
And you would use that regularly?
Yes, sir.
The state will move to introduce State's Exhibit number 6.
Any objection?
No, sir.
It's allowed.
Looking at State's Exhibit number 6, how do you know that's Cindy Blitzer's?
Because her name and her personnel number are listed in the first 2 columns, which means it's hers.
All right. And that personnel number is one of those numbers that you said had been assigned and that we saw in the personnel package.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And describe that piece of paper for us as several columns.
Okay. This piece of paper, of course, gives her name, her personnel number, the date of the entry or the date she did something, such as time worked, the hours that she entered, the type of code that she put in, whether it was time worked or holiday leave, when she created it, including the time she created it, who changed it last, when it was changed last, and who approved it.
All right. Now, that's several pages, correct?
Yes, sir.
How many pages is that one?
Eight.
And on those 8 pages, does it kind of go in reverse chronological order, meaning newest time first on the first page and oldest time on the last?
Yes, sir.
And there appears to be on that piece of paper several blanks in some of those columns. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
What are those blanks?
Means that the employee entered her time, but no one approved it.
All right. Now, below that, there appear to be some that were all approved, a chunk of time that was approved on one date. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
What was that date?
August 15th of 2016.
All right. I'm going to give you a highlighter, if you will. If you'll take that highlighter and mark the last approved date or time worked for August the 15th across. Okay. Now, if you'll go all the way back to when that chunk of time begins, that was approved on August the 15th, and mark similarly with the highlighter the first time that's approved on August the 15th. Thank you.
Mhm.
Now I'm going to, if I may publish this, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Discuss. Try to zoom in a little bit for you here. Make it a little easier to read, I hope. Can you see that at all?
Not at all.
All right. Well, what you might be able to see is whoa, you can't see anything right there, but where the highlighter, that highlighted mark.
Yes, sir.
This is the last date of time that was approved on August the 15th that you marked, correct? And on the third page is another highlighted mark, and that's the mark that you just made, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this column where the highlighter in my hand is pointed appears to be blank. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that's the approved by column.
Yes, sir.
And the one next to it again is a blank column, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the generated date column.
Yes, sir.
So this would be the column that marks when it was approved by the supervisor, and the column to the left of it would be who approved it.
Yes, sir.
Now, at the very top, there appears to be a Monday approved on October the 6th, 2016.
Okay.
Do you know what would have happened on that occasion based on your review of these records?
Can you tell me the date that's in the third column?
The third column,
Mm-hmm.
September the 5th of 2016.
That would have been Labor Day.
Okay.
And most likely one of my staff would have approved it to avoid it going to holiday comp and causing further issues. My staff will approve holiday leave when supervisors have not approved it in a timely manner, and that's the only thing we'll approve.
Okay.
And then we would have sent probably the supervisor an email reminding them to approve the time in a timely manner.
Okay. What types of issues are created if you don't go in and do that?
If you don't approve holiday leave, it then goes to holiday comp. And then if it's not called, an employee could be paid out holiday comp in error, which would be state taxpayer money that's paid out in error.
And you don't want that to
No.
happen? Why not?
It's my taxpayer money too.
Okay. Now, there's a number listed in this approved by for the August the 15th date.
Okay.
Okay. And I guess if I may approach, we'll just talk about this for a moment. Looking at that, can you tell me what the approved number or the number of the approver for this document is?
For that entry on August 15th, it was 1872414.
And that's the same number that approved all of those August the 15th?
Yes, sir.
Do you know whose number that is?
John Stoltz.
And what are the dates of time that were all approved on August the 15th?
Goes from July 15th of 16 back to February 29th of 2016.
All right. So from February to July,
Yes, sir.
and then once that time that August the 15th approval date happens, which is the last one that's approved until that holiday that you guys approved, right?
Yes, sir.
What's the time that's entered in and paid out by the state for those?
The rest of July and August and September and October.
So
Through the
end-
24th.
Through July to October 24th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last question about that time period.
Through July to October 24th, correct?
Correct.
Now, looking at those, if you will, just look at all of the records that you have for Cindy Blitzer, are you able to tell the number of hours worked inputted by her? And if you'll just skim the entirety of them and tell me when you're done.
The majority were entered by Cindy Blitzer.
Okay.
There are about 7 entries or 8 that were entered by members of my staff for holidays and also the very first little bit of time she worked in January of 15.
Okay. And why would your staff have, other than the holidays, why would your staff have inputted any time for her?
If she had not gotten access to Beacon yet, if we have a heavy workload and she had not gotten able to enter her time in Beacon, but they would have also asked for verification of what time was to be entered.
When you say they, you mean your staff?
I mean, the person who entered this, which would have been Shannon Mears.
She would have made contact and said, how much time were you working and got...
She would make contact with a supervisor or an administrative assistant, not the employee, and said what should be entered for her.
Okay. Now, looking at those forms, just like you did a moment ago, can you tell how many hours she, again, skim it and look at the number of hours inputted by her or your staff on her behalf for the course of her career?
The number of hours entered is the total down here, 3,464.
Okay. Now, if you'll skim through the pages and look at those numbers on the daily inputting.
The majority of them were 8 hours per day.
Okay, and we say the majority of them.
There were some instances, very few, of 1 day of sick leave, and then some hours of other management approved leave, and occurring in February timeframe that could have well been a snow event.
All right. So the large bulk of the hours that Cindy Blitzer inputted into her time work would have been 8-hour days.
Yes, sir.
Now that August 5th approval date, from the date that it's approved to the beginning, you know, that
Yes,
time
sir.
frame that we're talking about that was approved on August the 5th, were all of those 8-hour days?
Yes, sir.
What about after that last date of approval?
They were all 8-hour days.
Thank you. If I may approach again, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Looking at what I've marked as, for identification purposes, as State's Exhibit number 7, will you take a look at that, and once you've had a moment to review it, tell us what it is if you recognize it.
They're pay statements.
When we say they're pay statements, are those the statements that are issued by the state of North Carolina?
They are the pay statements issued by the state of North Carolina.
And again, are these things that are kept during the regular course of your business that you have access to and use to perform your duties?
I have access to them, yes.
Okay. And do they appear to be a fair and accurate representation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at this time, Your Honor, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibit 7.
Any objection?
No, sir.
Allowed.
Do you know who those are the pay statements of, or who
Cindy.
they belong to?
Cindy Blitzer.
And looking at those, can you tell me what time frame we're looking at on those pay statements?
The first pay statement starts for January 1st of 2015. And the last pay statement is for October, through October 31st of 2016, which will be whatever was in the month of October that was worked, because it's always the whole month that's listed on the pay statement.
Now, if you will, go back to the I'm sorry, if there is a pay statement in there for April of 2016, will you go back and look at that?
Okay?
Do you have it?
Yes, sir?
And looking at that pay statement, how much on that pay statement, does it indicate how much the gross pay for Cindy Blitzer was for that period of time?
$4,000.
We say 4,000, that's
Even.
$4,000.
$4,000 even.
And will you go through for each month from that April through the last of October 31st and list for us, say for us, the month and the gross pay for that month.
May 2016, 4,000. June 2016, 4,000. July 2016, 4,180. August 2016, 4,180. September 2016, 4,180. October 2016, $3,184.76.
All right, thank you. Now, during that period of time, based on your review of the records, if you know, would Cindy Blitzer have also been receiving her state benefits?
Yes, I can see her state benefits listed on her pay statement.
All right, and for each of those months?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. If I may approach.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ms. Tan, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 8 right now. If you will, take a moment and review that.
Okay.
Do you recognize that?
It's an allocation report for support staff.
Okay. And is that, again, something that you use during the regular course of your business and is kept routinely?
Yes, sir.
This time, Your Honor, the State will move to introduce State's Exhibit 8.
No objection.
It's allowed.
Looking at that allocation allotment, can you tell us generally what an allocation allotment is?
An allocation allotment is both for the assistant district attorneys in a district as well as the support staff in a district. Each elected district attorney has an allotment that they have the reins to pay employees within certain guidelines.
Okay. And we've kind of heard some testimony about this earlier, and I don't know if you were here or not for it, but we talked about it as a pool of money or a pot of money. Is that a fair description in
It
your
is
opinion?
a fair description.
Okay. And in looking at that allotment that you have in front of you, do you know whose allotment form that was?
It was for prosecutory district 9A.
So that would have been the person, Caswell County, and the elected district attorney of that group.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell when that allotment would have been accurate through?
It was prepared on July 31st, so it would have been once the July 2015 payroll was over.
Okay, so the end of July
End
in
of July.
2015?
Mm-hmm.
And in looking at that, how many, would that list all of the employees?
All the support staff employees.
Okay, and looking at all the support, and we talked about this too, there are kind of two separate pots of money, right? There's an ADA or assistant district attorney pot of money, and there's a support staff
Yes,
pot
sir.
of money. And so in that one, we would just be looking at a support staff pot of money.
Correct.
How many support staff members would have been listed and employed by the defendant for that period of time?
There were 5 employees.
Can you name those 5 employees for us?
Peed, Blitzer, Hallbrook, Henderson, and Ramsey.
And in looking at that, is there a total amount of money for that pot that is listed on the form?
Yes, sir.
What is that total amount of money?
$212,000, $751.
So that's the number that is in that pot that must be or can be divvied up amongst those folks that are listed.
Correct.
Now, there are some, as you said, some restrictions about minimums and guidelines for what they can be paid, right?
Yes, sir.
Is there, the way that money is dispersed to those employees at that time, is there any money left over in the pot?
No, the balance is 0.
Okay. So if, let's say, Mr. Bradsher had decided at that month that he wanted to give someone a raise, could he have done that?
No.
Because there's no money in the
There's no
pot.
money.
he would have, there might have been a way to do it, but he may have had to let somebody go or move some money around.
Correct.
Okay. But short of doing that, there's no extra money.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. If I may approach again.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you what I'm marking as State's Exhibit number 9. Okay? For identification purposes, will you look at that piece of paper? Once you've looked at that piece of paper, if you will tell me what it is, if you recognize it.
It is Mr. Bradsher's oath of office from January 1 of 2015.
Okay, and again, is that a document that is kept during the regular course of business for you?
Yes, sir.
You would have access to that
Yes, sir.
and appear to be altered or changed in any way?
No, sir.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, the State will move to introduce State's Exhibit 9.
Any objection?
So stipulate, yes.
It's admitted.
If I may reapproach.
Yes.
Looking at State's Exhibit 9, slowly if you can, do you mind reading that to the jury?
State of North Carolina, Pat McCrory, Governor, oath of office. I, Wallace Wayne Bradsher, Jr., do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as District Attorney, so help me God. I, Wallace Wayne Bradsher, Jr., do solemnly and sincerely swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina and to the constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the government thereof, and that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of said state, not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States, to the best of my knowledge and ability, so help me God. I, Wallace Wayne Bradsher, Jr., do solemnly swear that I will and truly serve the state of North Carolina in the office of District Attorney. I will, in the execution of my office, endeavor to have the criminal laws fairly and impartially administered so far as in me lies, according to the best of my knowledge and ability, so help me God. Sworn to and subscribed before me this first day of January 2015.
Thank you, and there's some signatures at the bottom,
Yes.
correct? All right, now I'm going to leave you with State's Exhibit number 5. We've already introduced that, and you said that that was Cindy Blitzer's personnel file, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, I want you to look through that file carefully and take note of what the documents that are in there are, okay?
Okay.
So you've had a chance to look through all of that?
Yes, sir.
Now, having looked through all of that document, we talked about what's included in there, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's supposed to include every piece of paper that as it relates to an employee's job, so as it relates to AOC.
Correct.
Okay. Now, anywhere in that document, did you find anywhere that AOC, or the Administrative Office of the Courts, approved a employee share program involving Cindy Blitzer?
No, sir.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First thing I wanted to start with was I didn't quite hear the question about the period from July through October 24th. There was a question about the pay period from where Mr. Stoltz had approved to the end. Who approved that last pay period?
No one approved that time.
Okay. In fact, you said Shannon Mears is assigned to our district, is that right?
Shannon Mears is, yes.
Okay. Is the document in there where Ms. Mears sent asking us to approve that time from the termination?
Let me look.
Okay.
I see a document from Ms. Mears confirming her last day of employment.
Okay. There was a document sent to the DA 9A office asking for approval of the hours and a response from my office. That should be in the personnel file, shouldn't it?
It should be. I'm looking at the other pieces of paper to make sure. The only other document concerning Cindy's time entry is from 2015, where Ms. P sent an email to Mr. Stoltz saying had there problems with entering the time in January of 15. And Shannon asked for clarification and certification for those hours.
So upon transmission of the documents that Cindy Blitzer had been terminated October 24th, the personnel file does not have a document that Shannon Mears sent asking for approval of the final hours, based on your review?
Based on my review, no.
All right. Now, you were aware that the SBI was looking into this in April, is that correct?
No, sir.
Okay. Did Agent Mace come to you to ask you to confirm employment of Cindy Blitzer and who her supervisor was?
If Agent Mays came to me in April, I do not remember. The first meeting I remember was in June of 2016.
Okay, I've got that one. Let me check. When Agent Mays testified, he was talking about going to someone to confirm where Cindy Blitzer was working. And I'll start with this June 30th, 2016. When Agent Mays came to you on June 30th, 2016, you were able to look up and determine where Ms. Blitzer was employed, is that correct?
Correct?
And how much she was making, is that right?
Correct.
And you indicated to him that her designated supervisor was John Stoltz, is that right?
Correct.
That information, it's fine to give to law enforcement without any type of warrant or anything, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so, were you aware of what the issue was, or that he was just asking about that specific employee?
I was not aware of what the issue was until he came to the office that day.
On June 30th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you checked on who was the supervisor and how much she was making, would you be able to see what we saw up here, that there were a period of months where nobody had signed off on her time?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something on direct that when y'all approved the holiday time, you would typically send an email to the supervisor.
Yes.
Is that in there?
No.
Okay.
We send an email probably to 200 supervisors
Okay.
who don't approve time, so we would not put a copy in every employee's file.
All right. So if I was looking for that, that would be, who would be the person sending the email? Shannon Mears?
No, it could have been Beth Simmons. It could have been Julie New. It would have been a blanket email, as I said, sent to 200 to 300 supervisors because they have a history of not improving time within a 30-day manner.
Okay. On looking at the Beacon, the last time that Jay Stoltz approved Cindy Blitzer's time would have been in February, is that right?
I won't know without looking at it again.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had it. May I approach you?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
So do you see when the last time Jay Stoltz would have approved the Beacon?
In 2016,
Yes.
he approved on March 23rd of 2016.
I'm sorry, what was the date again?
He approved it on March 23rd of 2016 at 4:53.
All right, so March 23rd, 2016, it was approved by Jay Stoltz.
Yes, sir.
And then every month afterwards until August, there is no supervisor that signs off. Is that right?
He signed off on all of that in August.
Right. But as we saw the blank spaces, when June 23rd rolled around,
June 30th.
there was no supervisor approval. Is that right?
There was none, but the employee was entering their time faithfully.
Okay. And then July, the employee was entering the time, but no supervisor was signing off of it.
They had not signed off on it yet.
All right. And if you could tell the jury how this works logistically, when you've said the term release the time, when the employee enters the hours and it's released, is there something in the system that sends that to Jay Stoltz because he was the designated supervisor?
No.
Okay, where does that go?
The supervisor is responsible for going into Beacon and seeing what time is there for them to approve.
All right. So the supervisor, without any systematic mechanism, would go in manually, check that particular employee's time, and then approve it.
Yes, sir.
All right. So from the date of Cindy Blitzer's employment through March 23rd, that was consistently done by Jay Stoltz, except in the very beginning by Gail Peed. Is that correct?
No, sir. Gil Peed never approved her time.
Okay. Gail Peed was the AA, is the AA for District 9A? is
Gil
that right?
Peed is the AA.
Okay. So all of the approvals of Cindy's time went through March 23rd with Jay Stoltz?
Yes, sir.
All right. And in terms of after March 23rd rolls around to June 23rd, and no supervisor signed off, you would expect that someone would send an email to Jay Stoltz or every supervisor in North Carolina who's late?
At that time frame, there was not a systematic sending of emails to supervisors who were late.
All right. So if there had been a mix-up come the end of June 23rd, there wouldn't be an email sent from y'all
No,
saying that it was missed.
no.
And then June 30th, that's shortly, just a little after a month, you have Agent Mays in there asking you a question about it. Did you take note that nobody had signed off it for the last 30 days?
I probably noticed it,
Okay.
but I see a lot of ones who haven't been signed off on for the
Okay.
last 30 days.
And then, is there anything in the system that would alert the supervisor or anybody else that this wasn't being signed off on?
No,
Okay. So it would theoretically continue on until someone caught it or y'all sent a mass email or a specific email, is that
Correct.
right? And then you've noted on August 15th, he did a approval dating back to March 23rd, is that right?
to March 20, he did an approval back to February 29th.
Okay. And then from the August 15th forward, there is no supervisor signing off saying that she's actually working that time, is that right?
Correct.
Here's the question before I get back to the system. You said there was a decision made in 2007 or what year about paying anyway,
Well,
regardless?
the decision was originally before then. We
Okay.
have always paid our employees,
Okay.
whether their time has been entered and released in leave accrued or not. Otherwise, our employees might not get paid because we have so many elected officials, so many places.
All right. Judicial branch employees is who you deal with, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So for how long has it been that payment of the salary is not connected to them entering time in Beacon?
Since at least 1980.
Okay. So there's not a cause and effect there. You enter in your hours and then you get paid.
There is not a cause and effect.
Okay. Is there any cause and effect of entering in the hours and it having to be approved?
The only effect for that would be vacation and sick leave accrual.
Okay. And it kind of works in the opposite. If the supervisor doesn't sign off on it, then there's no accrual of that benefit. Is
For
that
those
right?
employees, correct.
And if they do, then there is.
Correct.
Okay. So in terms of the Beacon system itself, you said it started in 2008. What was the system for timekeeping before that?
It was a green screen system where only leave taken was entered. I can't even call the name of it. Leave tracking system.
Okay, so if you were a state employee in the judicial branch in 2007, and you were a victim witness legal assistant or a investigator, you wouldn't be putting in your hours every month, is that right? You would only put in when you were going to take leave.
You would only send to Human Resources the amount of leave that you took. And in that, the leave administrators within each office would have inputted that into the system.
Okay. So payment, again, before 2008, wouldn't have been based on any representation by the employee. It would have been paid regardless.
It would have been paid regardless.
All right. And then since 2008, the system that you've described, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you are a new AOC employee, judicial branch, there is an orientation for the employee, is that right?
Online orientation, yes, sir.
They go through step by step and are told about their responsibilities of entering their hours in Beacon, is that right?
Sir.
My question is there someone, the supervisor, does the supervisor have a training?
There's a my staff training offered through Beacon.
Okay. So in terms of somebody being designated as a supervisor, before they start approving time, they go through some type of training. I know the AOC employee, you have to go through that orientation, right?
Well, my staff and the employee staff training are both through Beacon. And of course, it's up to the employee and or supervisor whether they actually do it or not. We don't stand over them to watch it.
Okay. And if you could describe for the jury, and some may be familiar with it, when we say approve, when the Beacon hours are there and the supervisor goes in, what's the function that occurs in terms of approving the hours?
So when a supervisor goes into their portal for Beacon, they will see that there's time waiting for them to approve for their employees. And it shows it week by week, and it shows how many hours have been entered for that employee for that week.
Okay.
And then they would review that particular employee's week. It shows the days that they have, the type of codes that they would use. So if they work 40 hours, it would show, say, 5 days, 8 hours time worked. If they took a sick day, it would show as a line 8 hours of sick leave, and then each day has their own line to show what their hours was. And at that point, if it's correct, the supervisor simply hits save, and it's done.
Okay. Do you know, is it a policy if AOC is put on notice that certain hours for a month can't be approved by the supervisor because there's an investigation into whether or not they're accurate, that y'all would pay that money anyway? Or is it a policy that says pay regardless?
An employee's pay would only be stopped if there was a type of action put in the system for the employee,
Okay.
such as a dismissal or suspension or a leave of absence.
All right, well, let me ask you this. When an employee is let go, is it typical for Shannon Mears to reach out if hours have not been approved and say, hey, we need you to approve these final hours?
It would be typical.
All right. And if that employee was under SBI investigation actively and the office knew about it as to whether or not the hours were accurate, and they sent that information back to AOC, how would that impact whether you paid that employee or not?
Please restate the question.
Okay. I'm trying to say it in a way because I know what happened, but I'm asking in terms of Shannon Mears reaching out to have hours approved. And if a judicial branch office responds by saying, we cannot approve these hours because there's an active SBI investigation questioning whether or not she worked these hours. If y'all got that type of transmission back before payroll was done, would y'all still pay the money?
That would be a decision higher than I was. It would probably go to the director to make that decision.
Okay, anything indicated in the personnel file that went to the director with regards to Cindy Blitzer?
No.
Okay. And do you have all the state's exhibits? If not, Your Honor, may I approach the witness again?
Yes.
Mr. Latour, I was talking to you about allocation. Assistant DAs have an allocation, is that right?
Correct.
So if there are 5 slots, I'll just use the approximate $70,000 in each slot, is that right?
If that's the average salary, yes.
Okay. And if there are 5 ADAs, you multiply the 70,000 times 5, is that right?
Correct.
And that's your total pool of money.
Correct.
And then the hiring authority makes the decision how to allocate that among the ADAs, is that right?
Correct, as long as he hits the minimum requirement for an ADA.
All right. And that's within the discretion of the hiring authority.
Yes, sir.
Okay. On this pool of money that you're looking at, State's Exhibit, victim witness legal assistance. Now, they have a set allocation for victim witness legal assistance, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Does that chart that Mr. Latour put in show the allocation for the legal assistant?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the allocation for each legal assistant?
$38,244.
All right. And that's true for all of the legal assistants?
Yes, sir.
And then is there an allocation for DA investigator?
Yes, sir.
And what is that allocation?
$47,597.
Okay. So in terms of pools of money, would you agree, how long have you been with AOC?
19 years.
19 years. Over the 19 years, not every district had a DA investigator slot, is that correct?
I can't recall one not having an investigator,
Currently?
ever.
Can't remember not having one ever?
No.
Okay. Well, that is a separate statute, isn't it, for the district attorney investigator?
I'm not sure of the statutes.
All right. There is AOC, the director of AOC does control the number of victim witness legal assistants dispersed across the state. Is that right?
That's true.
And that's an even bigger pool of money with regards to how the director decides to allocate how many victim witness legal assistants across the state. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you agree for the jury that the position of DA investigator is from statute allocated to the District 9A district, not the discretionary victim witness legal assistant position that the director allocates?
I can't agree to that because I'm unsure of the statute.
Okay. Let's go with what you know, which is the actual allocation for that investigator slot is different, isn't it?
There is a different amount of money, yes.
Okay. And in terms of Mr. Latour talking to you about a pool of money, is it your opinion that the investigator money allocation can be mixed with the victim witness legal assistant money to divide it among all those people for a salary?
Just as the administrative assistant can be added in with it, yes.
The add
All the support staff are added together.
can add to, is that correct?
The whole allotment is added together for the whole support staff for that office.
All right. Is the administrative assistant on that as well?
Yes, sir.
What's the allocation for administrative assistant?
50422.
Okay. And those allocations, do you know how they're set, either by the director or by statute?
They are not set by statute.
Okay. Discretionary for the administrator of the Office of Courts.
Yes,
And that would be Director Judge Marion Warren currently.
at the current time.
Is that right? Okay. So when you talked with Agent Mays and gave him that information, do you believe that you took any action with regards to talking to District 9A and saying, hey, there's no supervisor signing off on this particular employee's
No.
hours? Okay. All right, let's talk about the non-standard hours versus standard hours. You indicated that Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day is predominantly what on Cindy Blitzer's beacon. Is that right? How does a supervisor go and change the template so that an employee could reflect that they were working nights and weekends? How would they do
There
that?
wouldn't be a need to report that they're working nights especially because you're just reporting the number of hours a day.
Okay.
If the schedule were to be working on a Saturday or Sunday, then the supervisor should email Human Resources and say, hey, they're working a different schedule. I need them to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day, whatever the case may be.
I went to the ASC website this weekend and I looked at this orientation program, and do you recall it saying that standard working hours are from Sunday at midnight to Sunday at midnight?
Yes.
Well, sustained as to what you observed on the AOC
Right.
website, but you can ask the question.
You're familiar with the AOC website, aren't you? And you're familiar with the screen that says standard working hours are from Sunday night at midnight until the following Sunday night at midnight.
I'm familiar that the judicial branch work week runs from Sunday at midnight to the next Sunday at midnight.
All right. And in terms of the hours and schedules that employees worked, that would be in the discretion of the hiring authority of each judicial district. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So the purpose, if you know, of going to the beacon system if it has no cause and effect of payment versus recording of time. Do you know or had any orientation when it transitioned to this beacon system in 2008, the purposes of it?
The purpose of the beacon system?
Yes.
To pay our employees.
All right.
There's the integrated HR and payroll system as well as the timekeeping system. And without it, the state of North Carolina would not get paid, including the whole executive branch and the judicial branch.
And the system in 2007 was a leave-only system, though, is
The
that correct?
system, in 2007, there were 3 systems: PMIS, central payroll, and a leave tracking system. And those 3 systems did not talk to each other. And so a new system was created through the executive branch and through the Office of the State Controller.
And how frequently would you say, based on your experience, do supervisors late in terms of approving time? You said it happens a lot?
It's frequent.
Okay.
We recommend weekly time entry and weekly approval.
All right. So in terms of AOC's involvement with the employees, they pay them, monitor their benefits. You also provide help and support to admin folks in each judicial office, is that right?
Repeat the question, please.
You do provide help and support to each district attorney's office, judge's offices?
We provide support, yes.
Okay. And in terms of the training for the supervisors, that is a on-your-own type thing?
Yes, sir.
All right.
If they were to call and ask, we will gladly help them.
I noticed in response to Mr. Latour's question, you had said you had judges all over the state and other hiring authorities over the state, and you didn't want their people to not get paid just because they're out of place. Do you have a lot of hiring authorities that go into Beacon and do the approval?
Yes.
Okay. How many district attorneys would you say across the state actually do the supervisor checkoff of the Beacon hours that you're aware of?
I would say probably 75% of the elected DAs at least approve their time for their administrative assistant.
But other staff
Other
typically done by
staff typically would be done by the administrative assistant or other support staff, other people within the office.
Okay. In this particular case, are you aware of anybody else other than Shannon Mears who would have been in contact with District 9A office with regards to Cindy Blitzer's hours during this period of time?
The whole period of time she worked, or just the period of time that was not approved?
Let's start with the August to October timeframe.
Well, I can see that one of my staff approved time for Labor Day for 9/5, as I stated earlier, because we didn't want it to go to holiday comp. Now, as far as anyone else in my staff, no, probably not.
And I would like to go through, Mr. Latour, had you say generally it was 5 or 6 times AOC staff to approve her time? If we could
Yes.
just start at the beginning, if you could just tell me the dates that AOC would have actually approved Cindy Blitzer's time.
We're going to take a break
Okay.
before we do that. We'll resume at 10 minutes past 4. So ladies and gentlemen, if you'll return to the deliberation room at 10 minutes past 4, please recall the rules and instructions I've given you. Leave your notepads in the chairs. Everyone else, please remain seated while the jurors excuse themselves. Any matters that we need to take up before we recess?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we'll be in recess until 10 past.